Learning Tractate Shabbos, chapter 22. The name of the chapter is Chavit, cask, barrel, at page 145. Kuf Mem Hey, 145. So we ended off yesterday that if the olives or grapes squeezed are precisely equivalent in volume to an egg, I guess the amount of juice that came out of the olives, then although they themselves are tummy, the liquid extracted from them will not be contaminated by them, for immediately upon being squeezed, the fruit is reduced to less than the volume of an egg. Food of less than an egg volume cannot generate tumor.
The liquid from the fruit.
There's two things: there's the liquid and there's the fruit that is left after squeezing it.
The flesh of the fruit.
Yes. So if the flesh of the fruit was reduced to less than an egg, it does not generate tumor.
Okay.
This implies that if the fruits squeezed are greater in volume than an egg, let's say you squeezed a grapefruit,
okay,
and it's still greater than an egg, okay?
Then cobble tumor.
The liquid will be a contaminant. So the liquid, no, that's the point that he's making, that the liquid extracted from them will be contaminated by them.
By the fruit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, since this Mishnah does not differentiate between whether the fruit was squeezed into a pot or into a bowl, the implication is that the liquid will be contaminated in either case. But if you say that a beverage that is extracted for use in food is itself regarded as food, then when the squeezing is done into a pot, the juice is a food, and accordingly will not acquire tuma without first being made susceptible. What makes the food susceptible to tuma? This liquid that is called food, what makes it susceptible to tuma? B'mai is kasher. With what does it become susceptible? It was not brought into contact with any beverage. Since the Mishnah nonetheless rules a tame, it evidently holds that a beverage extracted for use in food is not food, but a beverage. And if it's beverage, it should be forbidden to do it on Shabbos. So the Gemara says, "Hu moisiv lo v'hu meforek lo." He asks a question, he answers it. B'seichel techa ke'aro. The Mishnah speaks only about a case of one who squeezes the fruit into a bowl. The juice is not deemed a food, but a beverage, and can therefore acquire tumor without first being made susceptible. It says in number 4, for why the Gemara did not give this answer in its previous challenge to Shmuel, Si Rabbeinu Chananel, and Rashbo. So Omar Rabbi Yirmiyah, the Gemara suggests that Shmuel's principle is the subject of a Tanoic dispute. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, trying to see if they said anything about. Right. So I went back just for a second to see what was Shmuel's principle. Shmuel's principle was like this: if you squeezing a cluster of grapes into a pot of food on Shabbos, you're allowed to do it. You may squeeze cluster of grapes into a pot of food on the Shabbos, but not into a bowl. Okay, that's what we actually do in today's time. If you're making a salad on Shabbos, okay, so you want to season the salad, you're allowed to squeeze lemon directly on the salad.
Right.
Why? Because that juice is not considered juice. The lemon juice is not considered juice when it's squeezed directly on the food. If you squeeze the lemon juice into a cup and then pull the juice in the cup into salad, it's a problem.
Yeah, but if you do it straight into the salad, it's okay.
You have to be careful. Some people they take the lemon. If you notice the professionals, so they squeeze the lemon into their hands. Why?
Why? I don't know why.
Think. Do it like this. You're capturing the lemon seeds in your hand.
Instead of having the seeds going into the thing. But the seeds of a lemon are insignificant.
I know, but I'm saying if somebody does it, it might be an issue of boiler.
Yeah.
But squeezing a lemon into a liquid, it's a problem. Or squeezing it to empty vessel. But Shmuel tells us that if you're squeezing grapes, which is not even onto food, then it's not a problem. It's actually right, permissible, right? A person may squeeze a cluster of grapes into a pot of food on the Shabbos, but not into a bowl. So that's Shmuel's principle. There's a lot of commentary on this concept. It says over there, the act of squeezing fruits is prohibited on Shabbos only if it entails extracting a beverage from a food, since the melacha of dash, threshing, demands the removal of one category of object from another. Shmuel permits one to squeeze grapes directly into a pot of food to improve the food's flavor, for since the juice of these grapes is designated to be used as food, it is legally regarded as not as a beverage. Here, so it says the one who squeezes it out is merely extracting a sort of food from another. So he looks at it like if you are squeezing it into food, so it's food going into food. It's not really a liquid going into food, even though in actuality is a liquid. It's a beverage, grape juice comes out of the grapes. But since it's directly into food, it's considered like food to food. Otherwise, it would be a problem because you're taking food, grapes, and you now put it in a new category. You made grape juice, right? That's the melacha of meforik. You are, so to speak, dismantling something and creating something else, or dash, or threshing and creating a new entity. Anyhow, so the Gemara now is trying to figure out, discusses primarily the principle of Shmuel. What is Shmuel's principle? Discussing Shmuel's principle that you're allowed to squeeze grapes onto food on Shabbos. The question of whether a beverage extracted for use in food is to be regarded as a food is a matter of dispute between Tanoim. So it's the fact that it's regarded as food and not as juice. For we have learned in a Mishnah elsewhere, a machlik ba'anovim, if a baker rubs his loaves with grapes, so that the juice will give them a shiny crust. Okay?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, you do the same with the eggs. Look,
right. But this is rubs his loaves with grapes, so that the juice will give them a shiny crust.
Right.
Lo uchsha. Good morning to all. Lo uchsha. So it says, the grapes do not become susceptible to tumor through contact with the juice that emerges from them. Usually what makes something susceptible to tumor is access to liquid, right? So over here it says lo uchsha. The fact that they touched the juice, some of the juice I guess came out, when it was rubbed against the bread,
right, so
doesn't make it
it
susceptible.
makes it part of the bread.
Rabbi Yehuda says it does make it susceptible.
Okay.
Rabbi Yehuda Omer Ursha Mai Lav Behaka Miflegi. So, is it not in this issue that they disagree? Once a Tana Kama holds a beverage that is extracted for use in food is itself regarded as food. The juice of these grapes is therefore considered a food, since it is being extracted for use to the loaves. It thus cannot render the grapes susceptible to tumah. Umar sovar lav. But the other master, Rabbi Yehuda, holds that such a beverage is not regarded as food, but as a beverage. It therefore will generate susceptibility to tumah. We see that Shmuel's principle is actually a matter of Tanoic dispute, whether the juice is considered food or considered beverage, considered juice. Papa said everyone agrees that mashke, food, liquid that goes into food, is not considered oichel.
Oichel is food.
It is not considered food.
But it's not considered, is it a beverage?
So what does it mean? So
Yeah.
what is it considered? So therefore it should be susceptible to tumah. It should make. However, they disagree here with regard to the law of a beverage that is extracted only to be discarded. What happens if you squeeze something to discard the juice?
Then it's not tumah, because something that's not of any use can't be tumah.
Which this juice is, since it is meant to be heated and evaporated in the oven.
So right, it's going to be mavatal after it's baked.
Right. Master Rabbi Yehuda holds that a beverage meant to be discarded is legally regarded as a beverage. Although the juice of these grapes is slated for burning, it is nonetheless a beverage, and will therefore render the grapes susceptible to tumah. Umar sovar lav mashku, when the Tana Kama holds that a beverage meant to be discarded, to be thrown away, is not regarded as a beverage, since this juice is destined for burning, is not a beverage, and therefore does not cause the grapes to become susceptible to tumah. Ubeflugta de'ane tanoi, and this disagreement between the Tana Kama and Rabbi Yehuda is bound up in another dispute of Tanaim. The Tanya, for it has been taught in a Braisa, if one bruises olives with unclean hands. What does it mean he bruises the olives? So it says this is done in order to soften the olives so that they will become sweet. What?
Are we still on 45A1?
Yeah, right in the bottom. It says 145A1, the bottom. It says, if one bruises olives with unclean hands, they become susceptible to tumah through contact with the oil that drips from them.
Yeah.
This is true if the reason he bruises them is in order. Why does he do it? To sweeten them. However, if he bruises them in order to dip them in salt, they do not become susceptible.
To pickle them.
Likewise, if he bruises them in order to know whether or not his olives have arrived at the stage when they are ready to be picked, they do not become susceptible. Rabbi Yehuda says, even if he bruises them in order to check whether they are ready to be picked, they do become susceptible to tumah through contact with the oil that drips from the mailav bakamiflige. What do they disagree? The mal sova mashke medleibud mashku. Rabbi Yehuda holds that a beverage meant to be discarded is regarded as a beverage. He therefore rules that the oil extracted from olives while checking them for ripeness will render them susceptible to tumah. Umar sova lav mashku. The other master, Tanakama, says, hold that a beverage meant to be discarded is not regarded as a beverage. Accordingly, this oil does not render the olive susceptible. We see that the Tanaic dispute regarding grape juice rubbed onto a baker's loaves is identical to the one regarding the oil that oozes from bruised olives. So the Gemara takes issue with Rav Papa's understanding of the dispute regarding juice rubbed onto a baker's loaves. Amar Rav Huna Bredi Rav Yeshua Hani Tanoi v'Marash Kayemet Leibu Pligi. These Tanoim that dispute the law of oil that drips from bruised olives are indeed disagreeing about whether a beverage meant to be discarded is regarded as a beverage. But those Tanoim that dispute the law of juice rubbed on a baker's loaves are disagreeing about whether a beverage meant to lend a sheen to food is regarded as a beverage. They by no means consider such juice a beverage meant to be discarded. Says in 18, for since the juice is smeared onto the loaves for a purpose, and it in fact accomplishes that purpose, it cannot be considered a substance meant to be discarded. A person may squeeze a cluster of grapes into a pot of food on Shabbos, just like Shmuel said, but not into a bowl. Over here is adding, however, a fish may be squeezed for its brine even into a bowl. Rav Dimi was sitting and he repeated this teaching. You teach this ruling in the name of Rav, and it therefore presents no difficulty for you. We teach this ruling in the name of Shmuel, and it therefore presents a difficulty for us. Because Shmuel did not mention the fish for brine. For did Shmuel truly say a fish may be squeezed for its brine even into a bowl? But it has been stated concerning the squeezing of pickled vegetables. Kovoshim. Kovush is something that is pickled.
Yeah.
Or pressed. Concerning the squeezing of pickled vegetables. Amar Rav Legufon, if one wishes to squeeze them for themselves in order to make them ready to eat, mutar, one is permitted to do so. Lemeimeyen, but if the purpose of squeezing is for their liquid, potur avalosu, he is exempt from punishment, but it shouldn't do it. Ushloka is, but with regard to boiled vegetables, bein legufon, bein lemeimeyen, mutar, whether he's doing it for the purpose of eating them or for the purpose of the liquid that comes out of them, is allowed. Shmuel Omar, but Shmuel said, 145a3, Shmuel said, Echad kvoshim ve'echad shlokis legufa mutar. Both pickled and boiled vegetables, if one wishes to squeeze them for themselves, one is permitted to do so. Lemeimeyen potu avalosu. If he's doing it, if he wishes to squeeze them for their liquid, one is exempt from penalty, but the act is prohibited by rabbinic decree.
What's the difference between the first, what they said first, and the second?
Different opinion. One opinion tells you that if you do it for the food, you're allowed to. And if you do it for the liquid, you're not allowed to. One opinion says that either way, it's fine. Both pickled and boiled vegetables, if you do it for themselves, one is permitted. That's the opinion of Shmuel. But if you're doing it for the water, for the liquid that comes out of them, that's Shmuel's opinion. potur avalo. So you shouldn't do it, but if you did it, you are potur. So now the law concerning fish brine is equivalent to that concerning the liquid contained in boiled vegetables. Why then does Shmuel permit squeezing a fish for its brine, yet prohibits squeezing boiled vegetables for their liquid? The fact that we teach the law of fish brine in the name of Shmuel presents a difficulty for us. Omar lei Rav Dimi said to him, Elokim, by God, Einai rov leizor. My eyes saw and not a stranger's. What does that mean? My eyes saw and not a stranger's. This is a pasuk from Eov, from Job, 1927.
Okay.
Mipume de Rabbi Menashe, for I myself heard this ruling from the mouth of Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah mi Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Yirmiyah heard it directly from Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera mi Rabbi Chia bar Ashi. Rabbi Zera heard it from Rabbi Chia bar Ashi. Rabbi Chia bar Ashi mi Rav, and Rabbi Chia bar Ashi heard it directly from Rav. I can therefore testify that it was in fact not Shmuel who taught the law of squeezing a fish for its brine, but Rav. This ruling does not represent a contradiction to Shmuel's ruling concerning boiled vegetables. The Gemara returns to discuss in greater detail the dispute between Rav and Shmuel regarding squeezing pickled or boiled vegetables. Gufa, the text itself stated, Kvo shim shesochaton, concerning the squeezing of pickled vegetables, amarav legufon. If one wishes to squeeze them for themselves in order to make them ready to eat, mutar. One is permitted to do so lemeimeyen. If he does it for the liquid, potur avalosu. One is exempt from penalty on the biblical level, but the act is prohibited by rabbinic decree. But with regard to boiled vegetables, and whether one wishes to squeeze them for themselves or whether for the liquid mutar, one is permitted to do so. Shmuel said, concerning both these and those, both pickled and boiled vegetables, the guf and mutar, if one wishes to squeeze them for themselves, he is permitted to do so. But if he wishes to squeeze them for the liquid, one is exempt from penalty on the biblical level, but the act is prohibited by rabbinic decree. Concerning both pickled and boiled vegetables, if one wishes to squeeze them for themselves, one is permitted to do so, but if he wishes to squeeze them for the liquid, one is liable to a chatos for doing so. Basically, they challenge the ruling of Rav, Shmuel, and Rabbi Yochanan on the basis of the following Braita. Sechatin kvoshim b'Shabbos secha Shabbos. We may squeeze pickled vegetables on the Shabbos for use on the Shabbos. Avaloy l'motzei Shabbos, but not for use after the departure of the Shabbos. Bless you. V'zeis ivan novim, but with regard to squeezing olives or grapes, le'ischot, one may not squeeze them on Shabbos at all. Being sochad, and if one did squeeze them on Shabbos chayav chatos, one is liable to chatos. Now, this brisa does not distinguish between one who squeezes pickled vegetables in order to obtain their liquid and one who does so in order to render them fit to eat, but states simply that squeezing them is permissible. This implies that one is even permitted to squeeze these vegetables for their liquid, but Rav, Shmuel, and Rabbi Yochanan all state the opposite. Kasha Rav, Kasha Shmuel, Kasha Rabbi Yochanan. Difficulty to Rav, difficulty to Shmuel, difficulty to Rabbi Yochanan. Rav mentaras tamei, Shmuel mentaras tamei, Rabbi Yochanan mentaras tamei. So each one, Rav, Shmuel, and Rabbi Yochanan, each one will give his own answer. Rav mentaras tamei, Rav resolves the difficulty according to his opinion by amending the brisa in this manner. We may squeeze pickled vegetables on the Shabbos for use on the Shabbos, but not for use after the departure of Shabbos, meaning it can make from Shabbos to regular day. Where are these words said? with regard to squeezing the vegetables for themselves. Aval meimein, but with regard to squeezing them for their liquid, potu avalosu, one is exempt from penalty on the biblical level, but the act is prohibited by rabbinic decree. Usheloko is but with regard to boiled vegetables, bein legufon, bein lemeimein muta, whether one wishes to squeeze them for themselves, or whether for their juice is permitted to do so. Rezeisim va'anovim, but with regard to squeezing olives or grapes, lo yischot, one may not squeeze them on the Shabbos at all. If one did squeeze them on Shabbos, he is liable to a chatos. Shmuel resolves the difficulty according to his opinion by amending the Baisa in this manner. We may squeeze pickled vegetables on Shabbos for the use on the Shabbos, and the same applies to boiled vegetables. When are these words said legufan with regard to squeezing the vegetables for themselves? But if he does it for the liquid, potu avalosu, one is exempt, but the act itself is prohibited by rabbinic law. With regard to squeezing olives or grapes, lo yischoit, one may not squeeze them on the Shabbos at all. 145a4. And if one did squeeze them on the Shabbos, he is liable to chatos. Rabbi Yochanan resolves the difficulty according to his opinion by amending the Brisa in this manner. We may squeeze pickled vegetables on the Shabbos for use on the Shabbos, but not for use after the departure of Shabbos. This applies both to pickled vegetables and to boiled vegetables. When are these words said? With regard to squeezing the vegetables for themselves, but not for their water. And if he did squeeze them for their liquid, he is regarded as one who squeezed olives or grapes for their liquid, and is thus liable to chatos. Each of these Amoraim resolves the difficulty in accordance with his own ruling. I want to present yet another Rav's statement regarding squeezing performed on the Shabbos. Amar Rav V'chia Barashi Amar Rav, Devar Torah, it is a Torah principle. Einoi chayav elal drisas zeisim v'anovim bilvad. One is liable only for the pressing of olives or grapes. The Gemara supports this statement with a Baisa v'chein Toni devei Menashe, and this was taught as well in a Baisa in the Academy of Menashe. Devar Torah eno chayav ela al derisas zeisim v'anovim bilvad. It is a Torah principle that one is liable only for the pressing of olives or grapes. This Baisa continues with an unrelated topic. You ready for the unrelated topic?
Ready, rock and roll.
Ve'ein eid mipi eid kosher. And a witness who acquired his information from the mouth of a second witness is not a valid witness.
It's called hearsay evidence.
What?
It's in American legal thing. It's called hearsay evidence.
Hearsay.
It's not. You didn't hear it directly. You hear it
Right.
through a third person, second.
Witness who acquired the information from the mouth of a second witness is not a valid witness.
Yeah.
You heard what happened. You didn't see what happened.
Right.
Ella, we're going to 145b1. Ella leidusisha bilvad, except with regard to offering testimony concerning the marital status of a woman. For if a witness testify, now in number 1 it says, for if a witness testifies that another informed him of the death overseas of a woman's husband, we accept his testimony and the woman is permitted to remarry. Although such testimony is biblically invalid, The rabbi is fearing that the woman would be left an aguna, a woman permanently restrained from remarrying, ruled that it be accepted in this case.
Now the rabbis.
So let's see. Ibalu, they inquired, Eid mi pi Eid, leidus b'chor mal. What is the law with regard to whether a witness who acquired his information from the mouth of a second witness is believed to offer testimony concerning the blemishes of a firstborn animal? Does the Kohen become permitted to use the blemished animal on the basis of such testimony or not? The Gemara records a disagreement regarding this question. Rav Ami prohibits the Kohen to make use of the animal on the basis of such testimony. Rav Asi shorei, but Rav Asi permits him to do so. Omar le Rav Asi. Rav Ami asked Rav Asi, "Ve'otana devei Menashe," but a brisa was taught in the academy of Menashe. Ein eid mi pi eid kosher al dusi shabalvad. A witness who acquired his information from the mouth of a second witness is not a valid witness except with regard to offering testimony concerning the marital status of a woman. This implies that with regard to any other legal question, such a witness is not believed. How then can Rav Asi that we say that we accept his testimony concerning the blemish of a firstborn animal? Say rather that what the Baisa means is that the only testimony for which such a witness is valid is testimony for which a woman too is valid. Just as a woman may bear witness concerning the blemish of a firstborn animal, so too may one who acquired his information from another. The Gemara relates, Rav Yemar validated the testimony of a witness who acquired his information from the mouth of a second witness in a case regarding the blemishes of a firstborn animal. Kori alei merema, where upon merema disparagingly referred to him, Yemar shori bucha, Yemar the permitter of the firstborn. Veilchata, what's the halacha? Eid mipi eid kosher levechoyer. A witness who acquired his testimony from the mouth of a second witness is considered a valid witness to testify about the blemishes of a firstborn animal. The Mishnah stated, Chalois devash, if honeycombs were chopped before Shabbos, and honey then oozed from the chopped combs on the Shabbos of its own accord, it is forbidden for consumption on the Shabbos, but Rabbi Lezer permits one to consume it. Rabbi Shah came from Nardor. Also, he came and brought a brisa with him. If olives or grapes were chopped before the Shabbos, and the juice then oozed from them on Shabbos of its own accord, it is forbidden for consumption on that Shabbos. Rabbi Shimon matirim, but Rabbi Lozo and Rabbi Shimon permits one to consume it. Amar Rav Yosef Gavro Yisiro Osar Ashmin. Rabbi Shah merely come to inform us that there is an additional man, Rabbi Shimon, who joins Rabbi Lozo in his descent. What else does the Baisa teach us that the Mishnah does not? Amar Laba Tuva Kamashmalan. It informs us of much that the Mishnah does not. The Imi must listen for, if we would only have learned of this dispute from the Mishnah, I would have said, Hosam, who it is only there in the case of crushed honeycombs that Rabbi Lezer permits consumption of the honey. The Mikro Uchla V'Sov Uchla, since the honey is food in the beginning, before it is extracted from the honeycomb, and remains food in the end, after it oozes from the comb. But here in the case of crushed olives and grapes, where the juice is a food in the beginning, but a beverage in the end. Perhaps Rabbi Elazar will not permit its consumption. Kamashmal, and the Brisa therefore informs us that even in the case of crushed olives or crushed grapes, Rabbi Elazar permits consumption of the liquid that oozes from them on the Shabbos. Starting a new Mishnah, page 145p2. Kol shebo bechamin me'erev Shabbos, anything that was placed into hot water, that was cooked before the Shabbos, we may soak it, we may soak in hot water on the Shabbos. Chol shleiva bechamin me'erev Shabbos, and anything that was not placed into hot water before the Shabbos, you may rinse only with hot water on the Shabbos. Except for an aged salted fish, or a salted Spanish mackerel, mackerel, which is a
small fish.
Yeah. Which we may not even rinse with hot water on the Shabbos. For the rinsing completes their preparation, it is therefore prohibited as an act of cooking.
I don't know if that completes. If you take it, they come in
Rinse it with hot water.
If they come in little cans, and you take it out, you can eat it just like this.
Maybe the one that the Mishnah is referring to is something that is not completely ready to eat. Let's say it's too salty, so by you washing it off, rinsing it, it makes it now the final blow.
All right, maybe less salty. Okay, I don't know. Okay, maybe. I don't know. I'm not a big mackerel eater anymore.
You're not a big mackerel eater?
Right. I eat herring.
Isn't it similar?
It's similar. I don't know. I like herring for Shalashir to get a roll. Now, since days are long, I go home, see after the 6 hours, get a roll and cream cheese and herring and some salad. Good to go.
Yeah.
Since I'm eating by myself, that's what I do.
Eat with your wife.
She's schmoozing at the time. It's okay.
The Gemara wonders what sort of food it is that is further soaked in hot water after having already been cooked. Kigon mai, such as what? Amar Rav Safra, kigon tarengolto de Rabbi Abba, such as the hen of Rabbi Abba, which he would customarily soak for many days after cooking it, until it would dissolve of its own accord.
What he's saying is in chicken soup.
Let's see. It says in number 11, Rabbi Abba would prepare this dish for medicinal reasons.
Chicken soup.
Yeah. But what they say, that it's the Jewish penicillin.
Right.
Yeah. Also, one time I happened to go there to Rabbi Abba's home in Eretz Yisrael. And he fed us of this dish. And had Rabbi Abba not given me 3-year-old wine to drink, Isnasi, I would have been compelled to vomit.
I guess it wasn't such good
in disgust at eating it. Yeah, so because the wine...
You washed it down with the wine, so kept it down.
The Gemara records Rabbi Yochanan opinions regarding a popular Babylonian dish. Rabbi Yochanan roik mikutach lebavloi. Rabbi Yochanan, who was from Eretz Yisrael, would spit upon remembering the revolting flavor of Babylonian kutach. Kutach is a sauce or dip made of breadcrumbs and whey, protein.
That sounds like not cool. Okay, I see the point.
Rabbi Yosef, who was from Babylonia, was troubled by the apparent contempt with which Jews of Eretz Yisrael viewed the Jews of Babylonia. What does it mean, the apparent contempt?
They looked
It was
down
obvious
upon. They
that
looked down upon. But I always thought it was the other way around, because the Jews that went up from Babel, they were supposed to have shilas, and the Jews they had the good yichus.
it's Amar Rav Yosef v'liru kanan mitar negol to the Rabbi Abba, but we Babylonians too might have good reason to spit upon, remembering the repulsiveness of the hand of Rabbi Abba. And furthermore, others of Eretz Yisrael do not consider the Babylonian kutach to be repulsive, as is evident from an incident that occurred with Rav Gaza. Omar Rav Goza. Rav Goza said, Zimno chad iklis la'osam. One time I happened to go there, to Eretz Yisrael. Ve'avadi skutach d'Ravloi. And I prepared the Babylonian kutach. She'ilu minei kol berichem ha'arav. The fact that all the sick of the West, Eretz Yisrael, then begged some of that kutach from Rav Gaza. Evidently, they did not find as unpalatable as Rabbi Yochanan. As Rabbi Yochanan did. For them, it wasn't repulsive. It was palatable to them. And anything that was not placed into hot water before the Shabbos, we may rinse it with hot water on the Shabbos, except for an aged salted fish or a salted Spanish mackerel. If one rinsed a Spanish mackerel with hot water on the Shabbos, what is the law? If one rinsed it, he is liable to chatos. But this act is one of cooking under biblical law. Ma shows proof that this act violates a biblical prohibition. Amar Mar Beredi Ravina. Mar, the son of Ravina, said, Afanana mitanina. We too have learned this in our Mishnah as well. Chutz says, in anything that was not placed into hot water before the Shabbos, we may rinse it with hot water on the Shabbos, except for an aged salted fish or a Spanish mackerel, which may not be rinsed on Shabbos Shadachos. And for the rinsing completes their preparation, it is therefore considered an act of cooking under biblical law. Shmamina, we may indeed learn from this Mishnah that one who rinses such a fish on the Shabbos violates a biblical prohibition. He is therefore liable to chatos. Having mentioned ruling concerning the Spanish mackerel, the Gemara wishes to teach us something further regarding his fish. It therefore relates the following incident. Rabbi Yochanan was sitting and was dozing. Rabbi said to Ravasi, why the chickens of Babylonia are fat?
Fatter.
Why are the birds in Babylonia fatter than those in Eretz Yisrael? Go to the Gaza desert, and I will show you birds that are fatter than them. Why are the festivals in Babylonia more joyous than those in Eretz Yisrael? Because the Babylonian Jews are poor, and all the rejoicing is reserved for the festivals. In Eretz Yisrael, they're having a good time all year long. So they didn't have such a striking difference between the regular and
good news, bad news.
Why are the Torah scholars of Babylonia adorned with beautiful clothing, while those of Eretz Yisrael are not?
This is a contradiction, because the first pasuk he said they're poor. The second one, the Talmidim are wearing nice clothes.
Talmidei Chachomim, we're talking about everyone else.
Right, okay.
She'eino bnei Torah, because the Babylonians are not Torah scholars of the caliber of those of Eretz Yisrael, and therefore must adorn themselves in order to elicit proper honor from the
so this is kind of an insult to them.
From the populace. And why are idolaters impure? Spiritual impurity. So, because they eat abominable creatures and crawling creatures.
Yuck.
Ita Rabbi Yochanan walked to these questions and answers. Amalu Dardake. Children, lekach amarti lochem, have I not said to you, Emor lachochma achoisi ot. Say to wisdom, you are my sister. Im bog lecha ador ke'achoischa she'asur lecha emrehu. If a matter of law is as clear to you as the fact that your sister is forbidden to you, you may repeat it. V'im lav, if it's not so clear to you, loy toimrehu, you may not repeat it. Why then do you speak of these matters which are not clear to you? Yeah, which are not clear to you at all. Abichia barabo and Rav Asi reply, Omrule v'lemalan marezem mehen. Let the master tell us the answers to some of these questions. Mipneima, first question was, why are the birds in Babylonia fatter than those in Eretz Yisrael? Because unlike the birds of Eretz Yisrael, they were not exiled. So they didn't have to travel, they didn't lose their fatness. Shenema, for it is stated regarding those who were never exiled, Sha'anan moyov mineurav v'sheket hu el shemoru v'agilo loholach. Moav has been tranquil from its youth, and its rest quiet upon its lees, and into exile it has not gone. Therefore its flavor has remained, and its aroma has not changed. This is a pasuk in Yirmiyah 48:11. We see that exile undermines the existence of those who suffer it. The birds of Eretz Yisrael who suffered exile are not as fat as those of Babylonia who did not.
Okay, but the birds could have been there before and after everything. I don't understand why they would have.
People who exiled, they exiled with their animals and with their birds. From where do we know that the birds here in Eretz Yisrael were once exiled? Here you see, asking something similar to what you said. 52 years of exile, no man passed through Yehuda. Shenema, it is stated, upon the destruction of the hills, I will raise up weeping and wailing from the bird of the heavens until the beast all have wandered and gone. The word beast, behema, has numerical value of 52, which alludes to the fact that the abandonment of Eretz Yisrael lasted 52 years. We see from this paisa that the birds and animals also went into exile.
Okay.
Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yaakov said the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Kulan chozu chutz mikul yisraelim. All the beasts returned to Eretz Yisrael except for the Spanish mackerel. The Omar Rav, Hanei Madre, the Vovod Madre Maila and Etam. The slopes of Babylonia return water to Ein Etam. The exiled fishes must have returned to Eretz Yisrael by this route. But this fish, the Spanish mackerel, Kevan de los Shorir Shidri, since its backbone is not firm enough to swim this route, Leimotzisoli could not ascend from Babylon to Eretz Yisrael. Then they ask another question: why are the festivals in Babylonia more joyous than those in Eretz Yisrael? Because the Babylonians were not included in that curse that lessened the joy of the festivals. For it is written regarding the punishment that would befall the Jewish nation, Vishbati kol mesoiso chago chodsho v'shabbato v'chol moyado, and I shall end all her joy, her festivals, her new month, her Shabbos, and all her festivals. It is written, Chodshechem u'moyadechem Sono nafshi hoyu olayla terach, your new month,
right,
and your holidays my soul hates, they have become a burden to me.
It was just in the Haftorah last week.
these verses were addressed the Jews in Eretz Yisrael. The joy on the festivals was lessened. The Babylonian Jews, however, did not suffer from this curse. What is meant by the words, they have become a burden to me? The Holy One, blessed be He, said, it is not enough for Israel that they sin before me, but they also burden me to know which harsh decree I should bring upon them. They are curious to know what the punishment would be. So, there was never a festival during which a troop did not come to Tzipori to plunder. And Rabbi Chanina said, there was never a festival during which a governor, a ruler, or an official did not come to Tiberias to plunder or to impose taxes. 145b5. Why are the Torah scholars of Babylonia adorned with beautiful clothing, while those of Eretz Yisrael are not? Because the Babylonians are not native to their locale, and they therefore find it necessary to distinguish themselves through their garments. For people say, when in my own city my name is enough. When in a city not my own, I must rely on my clothing. So the Gemara cites a pasuk in support of Rabbi Yochanan's explanation. Those of Yaakov who came will take root. They will bud and show blossom. Israel. Isaiah 27:6. There's a mimer on this pasuk. Tani Rabbi Yosef taught Elu Talmidei Chacham Shebavel. These are the Torah scholars of Babylon, Shoisim Tzitzin Uforchim LaTorah, who make buds and blossoms for the Torah. We see that the scholars of Babylonia were indeed great in Torah. Therefore, the reason they adorn themselves is because they find themselves in a strange place, as Rabbi Yochanan explained. Rabbi Yochanan continues with why are the idolaters impure? Because they did not stand at Mount Sinai to accept the Torah. For at the moment that the moment that the primal serpent, the primordial serpent, seduced Eve, he cast impurity into her. There's an interesting comment on this. It's in number 1. It says, when the Torah records Eve's words regarding her beguilement into eating from the tree of knowledge, it employs a term that connotes sexual relations. For the word Hishiani, the verse Hanochosh, Hishiani, the serpent deceived me, share the roots of the word Nisuin, marriage. The Torah teaches that when the serpent convinced Eve to eat it, coupled with her. With this act, the serpent cast impurity into Eve. Marshaw explained that man, who is formed in God's image, was created free of all spiritual contamination. By causing Eve to sin, the serpent injected into man the spiritual impurity that is at the root of all sin.
Yeah.
Israel, who stood at Mount Sinai to accept the Torah, their impurity was removed, and they were returned to their original uncontaminated state. They are today free of impurity. Of the Chaychov Shalom Dol Sinai Loi Pasko Zomosan. In the case of idolaters, however, who did not stand at Mount Sinai, their impurity was not removed. Thus persist to this day. What about converts who did not stand at Mount Sinai? Even though they themselves were not there, their muzzles were there. They're also standing at Mount Sinai. It says Mazel is a person's angel who advocates his cause in the heavenly court. The Gemara realizes that although the souls of converts were not at Sinai, their angels were. This sufficed to remove the impurity from them upon their conversion. Dichtiv, what is written in a verse that identifies those with whom the covenants of Sinai was made. Those who are standing here with us today before Hashem our God, and those who are not here with us today. This teaches that even those who would only later join the Jewish nation were present in some form at the revelation at Sinai. Their presence there caused impurity to be removed. Ufliga de Rabbi Abba bar Kahana. And this Rabbi Yochanan's statement is contrary to the opinion of Rabbi Abba bar Kahana. Rabbi Abba bar Kahana ad shlo yishader lepaskut zoma ma'aviseinu. Not until 3 generations had passed was the impurity introduced into Eve by the serpent removed from our forefathers. Avram seared Ishmael, a product of his impurity. Yitzchak early days, so while Yitzchak sired, Avram sired Ishmael, Isaac sired Esau, Yaakov early name also Shvatim. Yaakov sired the 12 tribes. Sheloya ben Shum Defi, in whom there was no aberration, there was nothing wrong with them. All were free of the serpent's contamination. So Rabbi Abba holds that the Jews were freed of impurity with the birth of Yaakov long before the revelation of Sinai. Bruchim Tiyu.